Hey friends, welcome back to another children's sermon. For those of you who are new here, my name is Becca, and for those of you who are joining us once again, it is good to be with you again. So welcome to the couch. We're back on the couch. I'm sorry I missed you last week, but I hope you had a really great story with Pastor Micah. And today we're going to do a children's sermon on the gospel. So the gospel is from Mark, which is in the New Testament. And it is a gospel, so it goes Matthew and then Mark. So Mark is the second gospel, and it's in the New Testament. And Mark was one of Jesus's disciples. So he is writing a story about the perspective of Jesus's life. So I have a very important question to ask you. Have you ever tried to read a book while watching TV? Do you remember any part of the book after you've read it while the TV's been on? Do you pay more attention to the TV or the book? It can be so hard. That's why we can't do homework with the TV on. It's too distracting. Do you remember, speaking of distractions, learning how to walk? Do you remember how hard it was? Well, maybe you don't remember because you were really little, but have you ever seen a baby learn to walk? Do they just go crawl walk, or does it take a lot of practice to walk? You're right, it takes a lot of practice. And so who helps you learn how to walk? Your mom and your dad, maybe your grandparents, maybe your aunts or uncles, maybe your siblings, maybe your cousins, right? And what are some different ways we learn how they help us? What are some different ways they help us learn to walk? Maybe a baby holds your hands and you help the baby walk, right? Or they helped you walk. Do they hold your hand when you're walking to help you from falling? Yeah. But do you fall anyways? Yeah. Falling is inevitable. It's just really hard to stay focused enough, or really hard if your legs aren't strong enough yet. So it takes a lot of practice. And so I want you to think about the two things we talked about, the two stories. One, how distracting it is to do your homework when the TV's on. And two, all the practice it takes to learn to walk. So distractions and practice. Are you remembering them? Are you drawing a picture in your head of those two things so that you can remember those two things? Wow, you're so smart. So today's gospel kind of reminds me of that. Jesus is telling the disciples that they have to pay attention to God, which can be as hard as learning to walk. Remember, distractions, you have to pay attention. And learning to walk is really hard. And so Jesus is telling them you have to pay attention to God. And that is really hard because it can be as hard as learning to walk. And by no means do the disciples have to do this perfectly because it takes practice, right? But they have to pay attention to God. And it is hard to learn and do. So it takes practice. You're right. And Jesus calls those things that people do to make learning difficult, learning about God difficult, called stumbling blocks. So the TV is a stumbling block when trying to read, or heavy shoes can be a stumbling block when you're learning to walk, or anything that distracts you, something that makes it hard to do your tasks. So if your task is to do your homework, what's something that distracts you from doing your homework? For me, my dogs. Or video games, or a movie I really want to watch, or playing outside with my friends. Those things are stumbling blocks. And so Jesus is saying those things that are distracting you from learning about God are stumbling blocks. And that we shouldn't put them in front of people. So we shouldn't be distracted by them, but we also shouldn't be a stumbling block. We shouldn't be something that distracts somebody from learning about God. So basically, this whole story is saying that if you see someone helping someone else pay attention, don't stop them. We should help people pay attention to God. And if you know that someone is learning to pay attention to God, don't make it harder. We don't want to be a stumbling block. We want to be an assistant. We want to help them and help them learn about God. And so our story today, Jesus was saying that we should learn and be closer to God, but we have to practice that because that's hard. And Jesus was really good at inviting others and telling them to learn more about God and to pay attention to God. He knew that there were things that could make paying attention to God a lot harder to do. So just like your parents or your friends or your aunts or your uncles or your cousins or your siblings and how they helped you learn to walk, we should be helpful when other people are learning about God. We don't want to make it harder for others, right? We want to be helpful. And that's the same for us too. We want people to be helpful to us when we are learning about God. We're not meant to force or argue or push people into doing things, but we just want to help them pay attention. What are ways that you could help someone pay attention to God? Yeah, you could absolutely point it out. You could say, wow, look, I love how that person is helping that person, right? That's an easy way to help someone pay attention to God. What about reading your Bible stories or sharing your faith stories with your family? Paying attention to God can be as easy as talking about it at dinner every night. So when we do that, it becomes normal and regular, and we practice it often. Another easy way to help people pay attention to God is inviting them to church, inviting them to kids club or youth group or Sunday school, all those things, or share this video with them. So we are supposed to be helping people get over stumbling blocks and not be stumbling blocks. Because when we invite others to join us in paying attention to God, then we are doing just like Jesus was instructing the disciples to do today. And that's the good news. We are to learn more about God, and we are to help other people learn more about God. All right, friends, that's our story this week. If you would like to read our gospel this week, it comes from Mark 9, verses 38 through 50. That is Mark chapter 9, verses 38 through 50. All right, friends, that's our story for this week. Till next time, see ya.